The naked giant zombie vampire witch Viking, flesh-consuming, shape-shifting, OP evil spirit that can swim through rocks. That's what we're talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
I have no idea how you did that without getting tongue-tied. I'm not even going to try.
The Monster Guys podcast begins now.
I got skills.
All right.
I got skills. I'm going to take my victory lap now.
I'm going to leave that to you three times in between the head and the body.
3 times in between the head and the body.
Widdershins.
I will take my victory lap. Welcome to the Monster Guys podcast. I'm DC McGannon. As always, I'm here with C. Michael McGannon. Michael, got anything interesting happening this week?
Yeah, I'm actually creating a new scenario, a new campaign for a role-playing game for a game group this week that is based off of cheesy 80s horror movies. So having a lot of fun with that and looking forward to playing it soon.
Sweet. Well, I am still on the tail end of allergy stuff, but slowly getting the gardens back in order, and we have our little moon garden that is popping up already, so I'm pretty excited to see where that goes this year.
Yeah, you said something about doing like 60 transplants or something?
Yeah, it was kind of bizarre because last year we planted a new set of flowers that bloom in the moonlight and then a corresponding flower that blooms in the daylight. And we didn't think that there was going to be a lot that came from that because it's an annual, it dies, and we didn't think we had it in such a place where the seeds that fell from the plant would sprout up this year. However, we were very wrong. We have now realized that those seeds not only dropped and are growing from where the plants were, but the wind has blown them all over the yard, and these little plants are popping up literally, I think, in the hundreds everywhere.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, but it's kind of overwhelming because these things get really big and stretch out really far. And so I think we're going to have a yard and house full of these flowers and these plants. So we're trying to find them all right now and transplant them and either give them away or sell them or something, do something, because we don't want to lose them all. We just didn't know that they would put off that many seeds, and we didn't know that those seeds would be blown around so much because they're big, heavy seeds. And so we were quite surprised to find so many of them popping up everywhere. But hey, you know what? We'll look really pretty for all the drivers by.
Well, that's pretty cool, and at least they're pretty flowers, so that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, they are, and I love going out in the moonlight and watching plants that bloom at night, so I'll get to see them all over the place this year. Well, this week we are wrapping up our main podcast episodes on the Undead for the month of April. Can you believe it's already almost the end of April?
I could not until you just said that, so it finally hit, I think.
First of all, we're almost halfway through the year.
Yeah.
This year's going by crazy fast. Second of all, I think today or this weekend is actually halfway to Halloween.
Oh, really? I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yep. So we are almost to the tipping point to start racing toward the most wonderful time of the year once more.
Yes.
I'm very excited about that. I guess in not so exciting news, we lost several celebrities this week that people really adore, and one of those being Prince.
Yeah, that was very sad to hear.
And
very shocking.
Yeah, it was a true heartbreaker. Just thoughts and prayers to his family and those close to him, and of course fans around the world are mourning him right now. So I think just a tragic and great loss. Not only the musical world and the entertainment world, but to humanity.
We've had kind of a rough year. As far as celebrities have gone.
Yeah, it's been pretty rough, and I think honestly we just need to bubble wrap everybody we have left that we love and kind of put them in a closet for the rest of the year or something, because I'm kind of getting tired of this.
Yeah,
a lot of downers there. You know what? We'll remember Prince and those who we've lost before him this year through their legacy, through their art, through the lives that they left behind. I think one of the things that I'm always excited to hear about, not excited to hear about, I shouldn't say that, but I'm always glad to hear about after someone like this passes is how much they did privately for other people, whether it was charity or otherwise. And Prince was one of those guys who did that as well. He did a lot privately that nobody ever knew about to help with charity and help with those in need. It was just as tragic as it was to lose him and not have him here right now. It's just a real nice thing to hear of all that he has left behind, even beyond his music and beyond his art and his charity and what he gives and will continue even beyond his death. He'll continue to give through his work.
Yes, very much so.
So this week we're gonna finish up our talk on the undead, and we're gonna go to a different place than we've been to, I think, in quite some time. We're gonna talk about Vikings.
Vikings, back to Scandinavia, where we had a lot of fun podcasts last year.
A lot of fun podcasts, a lot of really great feedback from people. I think we even heard from a couple of people
in Scandinavia,
in that region of the world that wrote into us and hung out with us a little bit online. So, but we're going to talk about Viking Undead.
Ooh.
And particularly Viking, I don't even really know to call them zombies, because I think it goes beyond that.
A lot of people do call them zombies, but they are so much more than that. And I think we might have a couple of fans in particular that are excited about this episode. I know maybe I should just call him longtime friend at this point. Kellen, if you're out there, you'll like this episode. We covered naked Viking ninja werebears last year. Today, we're talking about...
Don't even ask how that one came about. It's all good. Naked ninja Viking werebears.
I don't know what to call of these guys yet, what ridiculous name we'll come up with, but we're just Viking zombies.
Kellen, we tip our hat to you in regards to the Naked Ninja Viking werebear. For all of you guys over there in OKC, Kellen, Logan, and Jerry, and Cliff, this one's for you guys. So let's talk about the Viking Undead. In particularly, let's talk about the Draugr.
All right, so the Draugr is, as we said, a Viking undead, or a Scandinavian undead spirit. Some people did consider it a bit of a zombie or a ghost, but it's a lot more than that. I'd like to stop before we get too much into what it is to give its other name that is maybe not quite as well known as, but I really like this name just because of the translation and what it means. But that name is Aptrgangr, which means again walker, which is pretty cool. It's got that zombie feel to it, but it's got a spooky, stylish feel to it as well. Just to be clear, they're not zombies, and they're kind of ghosts.
The Draugr are not zombies.
Right, they're not.
I think the original translation of that word is ghost.
A ghost or a revenant, yes.
Okay.
But they do have corporeal forms, so people consider them to be similar to zombies or similar to vampires even, and we'll get to why they are paired up with those creatures as we go on.
So let's just answer the question, what are Draugr?
They are, again, these corporeal spirits, evil spirits, or ghosts, or almost vampiric creatures that live in burial mounds. When a person died, sometimes the spirit would come back in that burial mound, and they were known for, because of the nature of those types of burial mounds, a lot of people were buried with a lot of treasure, or swords, or possessions. One story even tells about a guy who's buried with his hawk, his horse, and I think a pet dog as well. But they're buried with their items, their possessions, and they guard that with a great jealousy and a great sense of greed. Occasionally, they'll also rise from the grave to seek revenge or to carry out some unfulfilled duty, but oftentimes they're just greedy, mean, evil spirits that seek to harm people and guard their own treasure. Almost like a undead dragon of sorts, I guess.
Sounds like it, and from what I understand of Viking lore and mythology, life doesn't end at death. It almost takes on a whole new beginning.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Let's go back to the terms zombies and vampires, and we'll go also into the term of a witch. How is a Draugr different than a zombie? Because a lot of people will call this monster a zombie, and if you read about it or just try to look it up, you'll see the term Viking zombie or, Draugr as being a zombie. So, but how are they different from a zombie?
Well, they're not really a zombie. A lot of sagas would tell them as being uncorrupted.
And let's clarify, when you you say saga, for the listener who may or may not understand what you're talking about there, what are you speaking of when you say the saga?
Well, a lot of Scandinavian mythology comes from the sagas. It's their recorded history and their mythology. Oftentimes the two are inseparable in those sagas.
Okay, so the sagas being the recorded history, and you find the Draugr quite a bit throughout those writings.
They are pretty common, actually. Like, I was surprised when we started researching for this episode, because I'd heard of them before. They're actually pretty popular in role-playing games and games like Skyrim and Oblivion and other popular video games and role-playing games. They actually are pretty common, or pretty commonly found in old texts. Actually, even so recent as 1911, they are talked about in journals, research, and, like I said, the older ancient texts.
So then how are they different from a zombie specifically?
Well, what do you think of when you think of a zombie? It's kind of that lazy...
I think of Plants vs. Zombies. I think of a dead guy walking across his yard to kill daisies.
And getting shot at by a pea shooter.
Well,
I can tell you that they aren't getting shot at by pea shooters, for sure. They, like I was saying, in the sagas, they're described as being uncorrupted. And what that basically means is they didn't look like they were decomposing. Now, this is kind of contradictory because other sources do say that they look like they're decomposing, and that they smell of death. A lot of sources say that they look just like you and me, just like a normal person, but they are still intelligent. They carry on. In fact, one Draugr was said to be an undead king of sorts who actually had like a body count of 420 men before a hero came and slayed him. So yeah, they're not just simple zombies that are, falling apart. They're not mind slaves. If you go back to that older origin of the word zombie, they are their own thinking creatures and they have their own purpose and their own will about them.
Okay, so they're different from zombies specifically in a lot of ways. People also refer to them as vampires sometimes.
Okay.
How are they different than vampires?
Well, like vampires and like zombies, they do eat flesh and they do drink blood. They don't get they're not allergic to sunlight or garlic or anything like that. They can be harmed by iron, but they can't be killed by it. They are not so linear either. They're very magical. And we've talked about vampires on this podcast a decent amount. And many people know that vampires do have very special abilities about them. But the Draugr is almost like a witch at times, where they can control the weather or they can see the future and even shapeshift. But they're still not entirely a witch either, so it's kind of a interesting mashup of monsters.
So I was going to say, you bring up the term witch because they do hold some characteristics similar to witches, but then yet they're very different from witches.
Yeah, because they're this undead creature that has magical ability, but it's not like they're going around serving any force, and they don't have any familiars, and their abilities are not, while they are very magical and they have many strange sorceress abilities, they don't seem to have as many abilities as, say, a witch.
Here's what's interesting to me is that it seems like the Draugr could be like the ultimate zombie vampire witch character.
It is very powerful,
kind of the best of all three worlds and put together in a Viking.
It is very powerful, yes. And
so I want you to get a great visual on this. It's a zombie vampire witch Viking.
Now, I would go a step farther and say a giant zombie vampire witch Viking.
A giant zombie vampire witch Viking.
There you go, Kellen.
That's terrifying. Terrifying. Is it naked?
I'm sure that at some point there has been a naked Draugr.
So it could be a naked giant ninja. Not a ninja. Wait, let's go back. That was the other one. A naked giant. Wait, what are we talking about? A naked giant zombie vampire witch Viking.
Yes.
Wow,
let's go.
That is powerful. That is a terrifying, powerful monster.
We might have more to add to that title by the end of this too.
All right, you were talking about some of the abilities. So what are some of the abilities or the powers of this creature, of this powerful, ominous, and overwhelming
and very
visage?
Very maybe naked sometimes.
Yeah, okay, it just got really crazy mentally there. Okay, what are some of the abilities and the powers that it wields?
So, like I said, they can do very powerful feats like control the weather or manipulate the weather. They are also...
Which, I want to break in there, which, coming from that part of the world and that people group, as much as they did, not just on land, but by sea, you can only imagine the stories told. And if I'm not mistaken, history or mythology separates the Draugr into land and sea Draugr, and their greater legends go with the Draugr at sea. Is that correct?
The tide came in on that one, didn't it?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, no, I think the more common may still be with the land-dwelling ones just because of how many that there were, but I would say that the more terrifying of the group is definitely the one in sea. All you have to do is look up, and it's called a Draugen, but look up Draugen and see the old paintings drawn of them, and they are just freakish monsters. Even back then, the way they were illustrated were crazy.
Yeah, so you talk about controlling the weather. Imagine the stories and the legends that were wrought from the Draugr in Viking lore.
Yeah.
I mean, these are people of the sea. So, I mean, you know that's got to be some serious storytelling going on there.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so they could control the weather, similar to a lot of other very dangerous types of creatures like trolls and certain gods. They could also foretell the future to an extent.
My gosh, this creature just gets more and more...
we haven't even gotten to the brunt of it yet.
I mean, do I want to be a Draugr?
Well, if you think about it, mediums calling on spirits of the dead, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
It kind of fits.
So they can control the weather, can foretell the future.
They're also extremely strong, and what they are perhaps known best for is changing their size, being able to grow into a giant size, or as some sagas say, swell to that of like a swollen ox. So you kind of get this idea that they not only become giant, but they also become very thick. And with that, they actually become very heavy as well. And that's exactly how they kill most of their victims.
I was going to say, one of the legends is that it can become a cat.
Yes.
Shape shift into a cat and sit on somebody, and they grow to such an enormous size and heavy weight that it crushes the victim beneath them.
Very similar to some sleep paralysis phenomena, but much more lethal, just in the way that they physically crush the person instead of just psychologically torment them. But yes, they do shapeshift as well, and it's kind of crazy. Some of the forms they take are weird. They do take that cat form. They take a form of something that's very similar to a cat with like iron claws, and they can become animals like seals as well. So they do have a lot of just bizarre forms that they take with their powers.
So far, we have a naked giant zombie vampire witch, shape-shifting, weather-altering, fortune-telling...
cat troll monster.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and that is one thing as well. One Draugr was actually said to specifically turn into a troll itself. So that's just kind of an interesting little piece there. I think the other ability that they have that fascinates me is that they can walk through a person's dream. And that's all.
That was a very interesting piece of information.
Yeah, that's all well and good. That's pretty cool. That's pretty creepy, and
But the effect during that is what is really...
Yeah, you can mess a person up, definitely by walking through their dream, but this is unique because when you wake up and a Draugr has been walking through your dream, that's all mental, right? Yet, somehow, they managed to leave a physical gift behind to kind of prove that they were there. I almost think of it as like a dream calling card or something that they leave behind, and it's very creepy to think about.
It is all very creepy and just ridiculously powerful. I mean, we're just scratching the surface, but this creature already seems to be one of the more powerful monsters I've ever encountered in mythology and folklore.
Yeah, it definitely is OP, as they say in gaming, overpowered.
OP, yes, for sure.
2 Pro.
And that's
Let's
4
stop
with
there.
the numeral 4. OP for sure.
Let's stop before we embarrass ourselves any further.
Okay, so what makes a Draugr?
Well,
how does one become? Because I understand you can become one yourself.
Well, yeah, when you die, very oftentimes the spirit would come back to life pretty quickly too, but a Draugr specifically is more of an evil spirit. So if you were a very greedy person in life, if you were nasty or mean or a bully, or if you were just generally evil, then you might come back as a Draugr. If you were found, if you died and you were found in a position that was not laying down, like let's say you were, sitting in your chair or you were standing up and somehow stayed upright after dying, then again, you would become a Draugr. If you were a hero who went to slay a Draugr and you succeeded, then there is a chance that curse may actually be passed on to you. So it's kind of a sucky set of circumstances. In fact, I forgot as well, if you're killed by a Draugr, like there's a story of a farmer who was killed and all of his cattle were killed by one of these creatures, and he actually became another one as well. So it's kind of a mix of, the whole thing of being bitten by a vampire, but reverse as well, where if you kill the thing, you become the thing.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of information out there historically on how to become or how one is made, but that story about the farmer is a pretty prominent story with regards to becoming a Draugr.
Right. Like I said, it's just kind of an unfortunate thing. If you don't have these things happen, or if you do have these things happen, then you're kind of screwed. And it always gets me that you go to kill this mighty beast and you succeed, and hey, there's a chance that you too might become what you just sought to kill.
Yeah, Draugr for life.
Oh,
the
gosh.
numeral 4. I just got to be consistent here. All right, and there's my next question, because as powerful as this thing is, and the more we talk about it, the more powerful it becomes. Is that like a prophetic thing?
The more powerful you are,
the more powerful we talk about the Draugr.
Oh.
The more we talk about the Draugr, the more powerful it becomes.
Like he who shall not be named or something.
That's right. He just continues to become more and more powerful in my mind's eye. How does one stop the thing?
Well, prevention.
Is it possible to stop a Draugr?
It's very hard.
I guess it is, but is it possible to stop him without becoming one?
Yeah, it is. There's a chance. The thing is, when you kill a Draugr.
Okay, give us some insight here, because we need to arm ourselves.
Well,
this is value for the listener. Listeners, this is value for you.
When you kill a Draugr,
we want to go the extra mile. We don't want to just tell you about something. We want to give you the tools on how to survive the thing.
Definitely. We don't want you to die out there. But when you kill a Draugr, there's a chance that the evil spirit itself may come out and overtake you, and like I said, carry on that curse. So, the books aren't really clear on that. As far as I can tell, it's just a deal of have a very strong will about you and try not to become weak in that moment, which after, wrestling this thing down and killing it, I'm sure you would be very weak and tired. It's not too hard to see why that spirit could overtake you. I think prevention would probably be the best cause. There are ways to stop a Draugr from rising back from the dead, so to speak, and here are a couple for you. Number one, you could confuse the spirit. So when you're carrying the body to the grave, there are a couple things you can do here. My favorite has to be...
Because, of course, I'm going to be carrying a body to the grave.
Well, the funeral procession.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you guys are carrying the body to the grave, what you can do is spin around in a circle a few times. And some people even say that you have to do this widdershins, which is counterclockwise, or you...
This is just getting really interesting. I've got to dance around in circles with a body.
Yeah, well, it disorients the spirit, so the spirit doesn't know which way to rise and terrorize people. It makes you think that, they get up with this beeline in their head of, I've got to go here, here, and here. Like they've got some grocery list of towns to destroy. No, you walk in circles a few times on the way to the grave, and that disorients them so they don't know, which way to go. You could also block them in and brick up their barrows or their burial mounds, which is always, that's interesting to me because one of the things I forgot to mention earlier is that a Draugr can swim through rock, or it can change into a wisp of smoke to get out of its grave. So the whole prevention thing of, bricking up its burial mound, I don't know how much I would trust that. So I think the safer bet is, walk in circles with the dead body. Once you get there, once you bury the guy, what you can do is leave a pair of iron scissors on its chest and make sure that they are opened. I don't know why, but this is said to keep the corpse from becoming, the evil spirit that is the Draugr.
Well, it's very symbolic.
Cutting the ties, or
No, I have no idea what it's symbolic of.
Okay.
It's just symbolic, I'm sure.
Yeah, I haven't found the symbolism there yet. Other strange rituals, and these are a bit more practical, I think, than
Could
leaving
be an
scissors
X.
on top.
Open scissors make an X. Could be an iron X.
Why not just use like iron sticks then? I mean,
it's not very creative.
No, but
iron sticks.
I'm assuming scissors were hard to come by in those days.
These are Vikings.
Did they just use axes to cut their bags of chicken breasts open? Or
I'm sure there are Viking scissors out there.
What are those like? All right, you guys
big.
out there should email us and let us know what Viking scissors look like.
Very
Just
big and very
ones, okay?
sharp and very bloody scissors.
All right.
Viking scissors they are.
Anyways, the other things you can do when the corpse is lying down.
I'm bringing value to this conversation.
You are. I now want to see what Viking scissors look like.
That's right.
Tie the big toes together.
Tying their big toes together.
Yes.
This is kind of interesting going back to some of that giant lore.
It keeps them from getting up and, moving around, which... I feel like if you put the scissors on their chest, they're just going to be able to cut it open, but,
No, if you put the scissors on their chest and you tie their toes together and they'll fall on the scissors, and the scissors will cut them, and then they will die.
That's right. Okay, so listeners, you know what to do.
I gotta teach you something about warfare.
If the Draugr rises back from its grave anyways, the process to kill it was very difficult. And keep in mind that while iron can harm a Draugr, nothing really kills it. They're considered to be invincible to an extent.
Well, see, I asked you that earlier, but you said they could be defeated.
They can be defeated, yes, but they can't really be harmed by normal means or weapons. So here's what you do.
Can they or can they not? Can we? Or do we have any hope here?
Yes.
Whatsoever?
Just be a pro wrestler. No, not really. But yeah, the trick to killing a Draugr is to wrestle it, to actually grapple with it and fight it all the way back to its burial mound.
Okay.
Once you're there, and
you gotta be a beast to do that.
Yeah, that's why these guys are so hard to put down. So once you're there, you cut off its head. And some stories specify that you have to use a sword from its burial mound. And I don't like that because if it didn't have a sword, then I feel like you're kind of screwed and you've just wrestled this guy back to its burial mound for no good reason. I hope that you can just use your own weapon. Here's where it gets even crazier. Some people say that when you cut its head off, you have to circle the body. In between the body and the neck, you have to walk in a circle, widdershins 3 times.
That's the victory laps.
I guess.
Take your victory laps.
That image will never be the same in my head now.
Yep, raise your sword and take your walk.
From here, there are 2 different things you can do. Number 1, you can stake...
Oh, wait, we're not done?
No, you're not done yet.
Oh, my gosh.
You can stake the body, which seems like the easy way out, or you can burn the body until the ashes are cold, and then you scatter the ashes over the sea.
That would seem more Viking-like.
Yeah.
After you've taken your victory laps, burn the body, eat your meal over the fire, cook your fish or whatever, and wake up the next morning when they're cold and get in a boat and go to sea. That seems more Viking than just staking it. Staking it sounds very European and very clean and nice.
But I mean, that did happen, and it did the trick for
it didn't.
some people.
It only happened with people who moved to Viking land from Europe.
So just to refresh,
the real Vikings burned the body, cooled the ashes, ate their fish over it, and then put the ashes out to sea.
I feel like I don't want to eat the fish made from Viking zombie ashes.
You eat the flesh and drink the blood of your enemy, and you become more powerful than your enemy.
I don't want to become the Draugr, though.
Pretty awesome beast.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know.
But just to refresh for you guys, so here's what you do.
I'm at least going to want to wear the t-shirt of the Draugr.
We're going to go through this step by step. So
Is there a wrestler named the Draugr?
Not yet, I don't think.
I may have started something.
So
somebody may become the Draugr.
So you grapple this guy back to his home. You cut off his head. You do a victory lap, apparently, around his body.
That's right.
You burn his body. You wait for the ashes to be cold.
Well, you eat the fish over the fire.
That wasn't
And then
part of
you wait for the ashes to be cold.
And then you scatter those ashes into the sea. Pretty simple process, right?
Seems like it.
That's the way to kill a Draugr.
Problem is if you get one of those steps out of order, then you're messed up.
I feel like that's the natural way. Like, I don't feel like you can set it on fire before it's beheaded.
Yes, you can.
And I'm sure you can, but I feel like it's easier to do it when it's still. And I also feel like you don't want to set it on fire while you're grappling it. It makes sense.
That would just be an epic fight,
It
though.
would.
I mean, you would impress the neighbors
right
and
before
the
dying.
lady folk that you're trying to impress.
You'd be crispy.
That'd be awesome. I don't know. I maybe I'm watching too much Vikings these days. So many fires and wars and bloodshed. So with all of this, and I mentioned this earlier about the land and the sea, the land and the sea Viking, the land and the sea Draugr. Are there other types of Draugrs?
Yes, there are. Like I said, there are the Draugen, the giants that are well known for being in the water, made of seaweed sometimes, or not made of seaweed, but covered in seaweed sometimes. There are also and I do hope I'm saying this right, the haugbui, which is kind of confined to its burial mound. You know, the Draugr that we've been talking about, it walks around, going back to that name, the Again Walker. But the haugbui is confined to its burial mound. These guys don't really move around a whole lot. And you might ask why that's a problem. Well, if you get close enough to the Draugr's burial mound, then they actually can drive you mad and kill you just from driving you insane. There are stories of birds flying over the burial mounds and actually dropping out of the sky because the powerful aura of death and madness just takes them right out of the sky.
That's a very powerful piece of lore right there.
Yeah, it's...
that you can kill someone from the grave just by driving them mad.
They are formidable foes, like we said. And you know, sometimes they'll come out of their graves and they'll go on these wild sprees where they actually ride your cattle to death. Kind of like an evil fairy. You know, fairies...
Oh my God, I just had the picture of a fairy riding the dog around the house.
Yeah, exactly. They would do the same thing, but they would ride it to the point where it just, falls over and dies. stories.
Wow.
Yeah. We talked about earlier how they're very popular in video games and role-playing games. They still have ghost stories about Draugr to this day as well. It's kind of changed. It's not quite as epic as it used to be. The name for those monsters have been shortened to Draug, or Draug, I guess. These are ghosts that are mainly drowned at sea. They're kind of specific to the sea, and you can see them walking along the shoreline or on ships, and they are headless ghosts, kind of like the Dullahan, or they have heads that are made out of seaweed. So they're not quite as powerful, but they are very bizarre. And I think that wraps up the different types of Draugr that are out there.
Well, now, do you have something that you wanted to read from one of the sagas that you pulled up?
I had a few things to read. We kind of already passed that, but there is one thing that I was kind of saving, a story about a Draugr, and this I think is the last time that you see the scary version in the burial mound, if you will. And this is actually still recent to our day and age. It was printed in 1911 in a collection of volumes called Old Lore Miscellany, which is a fascinating series of publications made for, I think, what was called the Northern Club, which seemed to be, I don't know much about the series, but as far as I was reading, it's made for like this club or this society that did a lot of esoteric and folkloric research at the time.
Well, let's have it, man. Where's the story?
All right, well, I'll shorten the story, but I'll read a passage here from it in a second. The story basically goes as follows. A farmer is out in his field one day, and he is digging, and he actually comes across this mound, and he starts to dig the mound up to flatten the land. And he gets a few shovelfuls in when a Draugr appears. And this Draugr appears on top of the burial mound looking like a wiry old man with a wild beard and a crumpled hat in his hands. And he stops the farmer and he says this to him: "Thou art working thy own ruin, believe me, fellow. For if thou does any more work, thou will regret it when it is too late. Take me word, fellow, drop working in my house. For if thou doesn't, mark my word, fellow, if thou takes another shovelful, mark me word, thou will have 6 of the cattle dean in thy cornyard at one time. And if thou goes on doing any more work, fellow, mark me word, fellow, thou will have then 6 funerals from the house, fellow. Does thou mark me words? Good day, fellow." Very adamant.
That's a lot of thous.
A lot of thous and a lot of fellows.
A lot of thous, a lot of me's, and a lot of fellows.
So, unfortunately, the farmer kept on digging. He didn't mark his words at all, even though it was pretty darn adamant. And, even if I felt like this guy was kind of crazy and out of his mind, even though he just appeared out of nowhere on top of a burial mound, I think I'd mark his words. And,
I might want to listen to that one.
Unfortunately, like I said, he kept on going and messed with the burial mound. And as it turned out, 6 of his sheep died in the yard, just like the Draugr said. And in the few weeks that followed, there were 6 people in his household that died as well. And this, like I said, is printed in 1911, I think it's July 1911, in Old Lore Miscellany, and was retold to the writer by the farmer's son. So
we definitely have some modern references to this very old monster.
Yeah, very close even to this day. And like I said, the modern image has kind of changed, and you don't have much past that whole 1911 sighting, if you want to call it that, but still very fresh in the culture. Still very close to the heart.
Yeah, definitely. Well, do you have anything else that you want to share about the Draugr before we wrap up tonight?
Mark its words, fellows.
Mark its words, for sure.
Really, this is just a powerhouse monster. And for being undead, a lot of people will think, the undead is like the standardized monster of the monster world, but this guy is not to be messed with in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think I've got it nailed down here. Let me go
do you have
from the beginning.
Do you have a title?
I think I have titled this monster appropriately. Right. We're going to go with the naked, giant, zombie vampire witch Viking, flesh-consuming, shape-shifting, OP, evil spirit that can swim through rocks. How's that for the ultimate monster?
I think that is a pretty ultimate title for a pretty ultimate monster.
Yeah, that one's for you, Kellen. So, the naked giant zombie vampire witch Viking, flesh-consuming, shape-shifting, OP evil spirit that can swim through rocks. That's what we're talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
I have no idea how you did that without getting tongue-tied. I'm not even going to try.
I got skills.
All right.
I got skills. I'm going to take my victory lap now.
I'm going to leave that to you three times in between the head and the body.
3 times in between the head and the body.
Widdershins.
I will take my victory lap. Well, folks, there you go. The Draugr of Viking lore, the Viking Undead, powerful, menacing, evil beast. Hope you got a little bit out of that this week. Well, thanks, everybody. Look us up at themonsterguys.com. Hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at The Monster Guys. Subscribe to us, whether you're on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Until next time, have an awesome night and be safe.
Good night.